Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seatrade Cruise webinar on strategies for the manufacturer and supplier community. Thank you for joining us from literally all over the world today. My name is Ryan Stana from RWS Entertainment Group, and I am today's moderator for this session. Also, today is my birthday, so if anyone wants to send candies or balloons or flowers, contact Seatrade's corporate office and they'll give you my office address, just to let you know. So before we begin, a few housekeeping notes. I want to let you know that we are recording today's webinar and a link will be sent to all of you tomorrow. And if you're having difficulty hearing us today and are listening through your computer, please check your speaker volume to make sure it's turned up, or message us on the chat box located on the right side of your screen, and we will assist you with that issue. So I don't know if you joined me for last week's webinar, but prior to that, we had panelists back out at the last moment to go and adhere to something at Dollywood and take care of Dolly Parton. Well, this week, in true happy birthday fashion and a birthday surprise, we had a panelist back out at the last moment, but really great birthday surprise. We now have 3 panelists other than 2 that was originally scheduled. So it is my honor, and I'm so thankful to introduce these 3 panelists for today. First up is Lisa Guy, who is the Senior Manager, Global Hotel Procurement at Royal Caribbean Group. And she comes with the knowledge on what lines are thinking and doing during this crazy COVID pandemic. Next, we have Erik Achenbach, Director of Wine Sales for Cruise Lines at Intervine, Inc., which is a supplier to the cruise lines in the beverage sector. And last but not least, we have another Erik. Erik Schobesberger is the VP of Modernization, Sales, and Newbuilding Support Service Division at ALMACO Group, which is also a vendor for cruise lines that provides new construction and modernization throughout the world. So welcome, welcome, all 3 of you. Thank you, Erik A. and Lisa, for the last minute add-in. You're great additions to this panel today. And I truly feel that these individuals and what they have learned in the sectors of manufacturer and supplier community will be very helpful for us today. But before we begin, I like to sort of start with an icebreaker to get us all warmed up and talking. So I want each of our panel to tell us what your favorite cruise memory is. So who wants to go first?
Ladies first?
Lisa, go for it.
This is an easy one. June 2001, my honeymoon. My husband, who is Mr. Consumer Reports, had done all the research, and he decided that the perfect vacation would be an Alaska cruise. He chose Royal Caribbean, Radiance of the Seas inaugural season. She had that new ship smell. It was such an amazing experience that we were practically in tears when we got off the ship. And I said, how can we ever do this again? And he said, you know, you could always try to get a job with them.
Well, there you go. There you go. Hopefully we can all be back to Alaska soon. Erik A. or Erik S.?
I'll go next. I had a lot of great experiences, but I actually had a funny experience the last time I was on a cruise. The family took a cruise on the Allure of the Seas, and my sister's mother-in-law is very, you know, she's funny, but she got very tired after a couple days. So we sat her down at the Rising Tide bar, and because she didn't realize that it went up and down, and she sat down and she's resting, and I motioned to the guy she doesn't know, and he went and closed the door and started going up. She said, "Are you moving?" I said, yeah, you're moving. I said, bye.
That's great. That's great. And last but not least, Erik S.
Oh, there's quite a lot of good memories, but I would say the best memories I have from a cruise I did with my wife, and back then still very young son out of Dubai. I was living and working in Dubai for about 3 years, and we decided well, we need a short break. I also wanted to show my wife a bit more of the Middle East, of the neighboring countries. like Oman and Bahrain and so on. And we went on this cruise on I think it was the Costa Deliziosa. It was one of those two sister ships, the Deliziosa or the Luminosa. She was the newest ship to sail out of Dubai at that time. And well, my son was pretty much the only like very young kid on board. So we got a lot of attention from all the other passengers and crew as well. So good memories.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you guys for sharing all those memories, and all of us on today's webinar, I'm sure, are looking forward to more memories to be created at sea. But so the goal of today for all of us and all of you online watching this is to share information and best practice on the future of manufacturers and suppliers on board ships when cruising resumes. We will discuss key obstacles and ways to adapt and overcome them. In addition to the questions registered attendees sent today, on July 16th, I held a roundtable of the manufacturer and supplier executives in the cruise line industry, and we also came up with questions for today. So the questions that are about to be asked come from the submitted questions from everyone online today, and also from that roundtable on July 16th. So if you think of questions during this webinar, please type them in the chat box on the right, and we will try to cover them at the end of today. Also, I want to preface this by stating, when I ask a panelist a question, please remember that there are a lot of unknowns right now. Today, Erik A might say red, but tomorrow it might be purple. Also, some questions the panelists might not be able to answer due to confidentiality, and we need to respect that. So now let's begin and see what's happening. So first, I'm going to turn this over to Erik S. What are you hearing from your clients as we are on pause?
Well, I'd say that depends a lot on the client. I mean, at the moment, we have been constantly in touch with our clients. And one thing I appreciate actually very much is this, which I would say pretty much all the major cruise lines have been doing, these courtesy calls, you know, just to check up on, you know, okay, sure, that we might not have anything to offer to you guys at the moment in terms of projects or spare part sales or maintenance or whatever. But we just wanted to check how you guys are doing. I mean, what is the situation with your personnel, etc. But I think, well, the things we are hearing lately is, I mean, first of all, we are starting to get slowly a bit more clarity into the situation, but it's still very, very cloudy. It's very, I mean, nobody still knows when we will start cruising and what exactly is required in terms of processes, new technologies, any changes to the vessels. But we are in a constant dialogue, and I would say the things that are being discussed the most at the moment is what are the likely prerequisites for resuming cruising, and also how can we fulfill those requirements with a minimum initial cost, instead of doing huge large changes to the processes or the vessels themselves.
Great. Moving on to Lisa Guy, from a cruise line perspective, what do you hope for in your suppliers through this period? What would make you continue working with them? What are you looking for in that?
Well, what I would have hoped for, and what I'm happy to say we've really received, has been just understanding and flexibility, understanding that this is an absolutely unprecedented situation, that we'll share as much information as we can to help them plan, but that, as you said, there are so many unknowns. And really just an acknowledgement that we're all in this together and we'll work together to rise above. And they've all been outstanding.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that by saying, I think in this, you know, yes, we are vendors, but through this, we've become true partners. So people that were considered just a vendor that placed an order have truly become a partner, and vice versa for us, people that were clients have become true partnerships in working through this. So I think the ease of everyone working together is so important. Thank you for
Even
that, Lisa.
before this, actually, even before this, I prefer the term supplier to vendor because I think that implies more of a partnership, more collaborative relationship. I would never say just a vendor.
Yeah, no, we all appreciate that. Okay, Erik A. How are you weathering the storm of COVID-19, and have there been any pivots in your business?
Oh yeah, no, we've weathered it. I would say decent, but you know, of course, with the it's a fluid change. It's constantly changing. First thing we had to do was go out to our customers, our cruise lines, discuss with them. We understand what's going on. What can we do to help? And then we had to reinvent ourselves as a corporation. Cruise lines are not sailing. So what can we do? So we went out and we started working a little bit with hand sanitizer. That's such a competitive market. And then now recently we've gotten into online wine sales, and that business is really doing well for us now. But luckily we have a very good staff, and a lot of people don't understand that most of the business of Intervine is actually airline business. So we're also monitoring airline business and everything else. And when TSA numbers were coming in at 87,000 passengers going through the gates of TSA gates in April, now they're up to about 650 to 700,000. It's showing signs of improvement for us, and we're going to hopefully be able to continue on with the airlines and the online sales as well.
Wonderful. Moving to Erik S. Are you seeing a slowdown when it comes to manufacturing, or some of your manufacturing still business as usual to get things up and running?
Well, I'd really like to say that it's business as usual, but unfortunately it isn't at the time being. I mean, when we talk about what we call the service business, so essentially that's larger modernization, spare parts, and maintenance jobs. There is that business was the first to take the hit. Our spare parts sales are just a fraction of what they used to be. Modernization projects obviously are not happening at the moment anymore. We actually had a record year coming up before the projects. Some of the projects were cancelled, some of them were pushed back, and actually we managed to get one project done in the midst of the pandemic. On the new building side, things are looking better, but so work is continuing at most yards, but even there, I mean, we have been informed that deliveries are being pushed back slightly, but there I would say that we are way above 60% of our usual capacity, maybe even in most cases up to 80%. So it's a bit we have a very different outlook on the new building side as we do have on the after sales side. So that's the current situation.
Thank you for that, Erik. Lisa Guy, so given how flexible suppliers have been with taking back product that can't be used, will the same flexibility be seen from cruise lines in the future if a supplier can provide, for example, alcohol was what was originally quoted, but not more if more ends up being needed?
I think this crisis has highlighted something that should have been a best practice for us and for suppliers even before all of this started happening, which is really monitoring your inventory levels on a monthly or even more frequent basis for high turning items. So we started doing that probably 8 to 10 months ago on the hotel side at Royal Caribbean, just trying to identify what we had provided as a forecast. And we know that our forecasts are not always, they're mostly based on historical consumption. They don't take into account a menu change that we didn't see coming, or so many other operational changes that can affect our consumption. But monitoring what the supplier has in inventory for us versus what we're using on a weekly basis is so important, and now it's much more so. So we'll continue to do that, and we understand that having not sailed since the middle of March, we're going to have, if a supplier has perhaps a 4 to 6 month supply of bed linens on hand for us, that may now represent a 1-year supply or even longer, based on how gradually we return to service. So I think that if they had what we would have considered to be an excess inventory based on our pre-COVID usage levels, then there may be some issues, but we'll certainly partner with them and work through it however we can.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that, Lisa. Erik A., can you speak a little bit about your projected sales and volume once things get reopened?
Well, I can tell you now, we're looking probably at a 75% reduction in sales. And that's where us reinventing ourselves has to come in, because we really need to continue to bring in revenue for the company. So I see, like I said, a 75% discount or depletion in sales, but it will gradually come back. We're working with our customers, we're working with our suppliers, and we're constantly staying relevant with both of them to see what we can do and how we can move product that maybe couldn't be moved in the past, and how we can help everyone out, help the cruise lines alleviate their overabundance and help the winery move the product that they were holding for someone.
Yeah, thank you for that. Erik S., have you seen any of your clients putting their hands up and saying, what we were hoping to make as a capital project in 2021, we are now going to put back just a little bit through, though we're still on board, we might not open this new edition until 2022?
So far, well, yes and no. I mean, it's I mean, obviously everything for 2020 has been cancelled, and in many cases officially it's still going to happen in 2021, but unofficially there's a lot of talks, you know, about how what kind of capacity is needed. I mean, if you look at the market at the moment, a lot of the projects we did were actually done in order to increase the capacity of vessels already in the fleet. Due to the high demand, and it was not possible to build new building projects quickly enough to meet the rise in demand for cruising. So I'd say that many of that type of projects have been pushed out indefinitely. But then again, when it comes to any changes which improve operational efficiency, where you can save energy, where you can save crew hours, where in general, I mean, anything where you can generate more revenue from the passengers already on board instead of increasing the actual passenger capacity, those kind of projects, I think, you know, our clients are still more confident that will go ahead. But to be honest, I mean, there's a lot of talk that, you know, maybe not in 21, maybe in 22. So I think the situation is so fluid at the moment that nobody wants to commit, and nobody expects anybody to commit to any really major capex projects at the moment.
Thank you. Lisa, where are cruise lines more focused? Refreshing older ships, or entertainment, or spending time/effort on new ships? And do you believe entertainment budgets will shift?
Well, before all of this, we had some really great revitalization projects on the calendar, as Erik alluded to, that have now had to be scaled back significantly or even postponed indefinitely. So things are changing so quickly, but it seems that the focus, once we start our gradual return to service, will be on the newer ships. They're more energy efficient. We can run them more economically, and we can break even with a lower load factor than on the older ships. So it makes sense that those will be the first ones to be reintroduced to service.
Understood. Thank you for that. Erik A., what changes are we seeing in the beverage needs from some of your customers and their guests?
Oh, well, we're seeing a lot of single serve opportunities come up, a lot of wines in cans, a lot of RTDs come up. I know on the ships, they're never going to replace the bartenders. They're never going to replace, you know, the art of making the cocktail. They're not going to replace the proper wine service. But there is going to be a portion of the passengers and the guests that are going to want to reduce touch points. And that's where these RTDs, wines in cans, and single serve options are starting to come up and be available now.
Great, wonderful. Erik S., has anyone received feedback from their clients, or have you received feedback from your clients on an initiative to start hard selling again? And are you still seeing calls for empathy at this point?
Yes, we are seeing calls for empathy at this point. Hard selling, well, we have been, I mean, I don't know if you have been following ALMACO that much, but I mean, we have been introducing this new product line of sanitation products with completely new technologies for surface and air purification. Air purification in addition to our existing line of faucets, touchless faucets and hand sanitizer dispensers. But yeah, I'd say well, whatever can be, whichever products can help in getting cruises back on again. Yes, there's a demand for those. We have been also seeing a lot of requests for things like plexiglass dividers, this kind of stuff. So answers are yes, there is hard selling, but for a very limited amount of our product lines. And calls of empathy, I would actually say there are more calls of cooperation than calls of empathy. You know, I mean, the cruise lines want to know how we are doing. Do they still have suppliers in the future? Because the fact is that these are very grim times, not only for the cruise lines but also for our suppliers. And obviously, I mean, any feedback we can get from the cruise lines is highly appreciated.
That's great. And I'm going to just turn the same question over to Lisa. Lisa, what's your thoughts on the hard selling technique right now?
I agree with what Erik just said. We are still buying things, but it's a sort of a limited scope of what we're buying. We do have crew members on board that are maintaining, you know, the daily operation of the ship. Our Purell distributor, I would think, is very happy right now. As is also our janitorial, disinfectants, a lot of items that are critical to sanitation that have always been. I like to think that the cruise industry was, you know, we were doing all of these things before it was cool, really, in terms of, you know, keeping the sanitation at a very high level. On the other hand, our entertainment, sports activities, casino, you know, with no guests on board, there's very little happening there. But we have seen a lot of agility in our suppliers as they look for ways to reinvent themselves, meet needs that have just popped up that we never could have foreseen. And we're definitely trying to take advantage of that with our existing suppliers. And of course, you know, we welcome inquiries from new suppliers too. We're trying to keep it very balanced, but also supporting those. We understand we're not the only ones who are having a very difficult time right now, who are trying to keep people employed. And we're just looking to give opportunities wherever it makes sense.
Sure, that's wonderful. And Lisa, have lines still had the purchasing power through this pause in operations to buy products with longer or no shelf life?
I'm fortunate on the hotel side. Really, I don't have to worry about expiration dates on a lot of my things. So I mentioned bed linen in an earlier example. You know, we can continue using that. If that 6-month supply turns into a much longer, you know, stretch of time, we can continue to use it. So we are looking actively at items that have expiration dates, that have a shelf life concern, and seeing what can be done with those. Can they be donated? Can they be, you know, resold? Whatever we can do.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Trying to get creative.
And if you don't mind, I'd like to add to the shelf life portion. When we're seeing these new opportunities of single serves, and we're seeing these opportunities come up, what we're trying to do is we're trying to go to our vendors firsthand and ask, what is the shelf life? Because we know that once an order's placed, once it reaches a ship chandler or warehouse and makes it to the ship, it could be a couple months. So a 6-month shelf life really doesn't help us at all. I mean, it forces the cruise line, puts them in a predicament to really push the product out and force it on their guests when they don't really, maybe they don't need to. So everything we're looking for are shelf life stable, shelf stable, and we're looking for shelf lives of minimum of a year, preferably 2 if we can get them.
Yeah. Now, I know you've been talking about the single serve, but Erik, what change are wineries making during this time of COVID-19 to ensure that they are putting out safe products to their customers?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, no, we work with a number of wineries, and when this whole COVID started, the southern hemisphere was just starting their harvest, and many of them were in mid-harvest. And places like South Africa, the government said that it's non-essential, shut everything down. And other areas like Australia, Argentina, Chile, they were almost done with their harvest, and some of them were luckily done with their harvest. Now, when you come up to the northern hemisphere, especially like in California, the harvest is coming up in the next couple months. So what they're doing is they are doing a lot of health screening. Wineries have gone to the point where they've rented out houses and rooms for the interns to go that are going to work at the wineries. They're doing a 14-day quarantine. And then as far as social distancing, they used to have people pick the grapes in every aisle of the vineyard. Now maybe they're going to do it every other aisle. And then those every other aisles, maybe they'll start with rows 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9 first. And then maybe a half hour later, they'll go to 2, 4, 6, and 8 to ensure that there's social distancing both front and back and side to side. They're pushing more about wearing masks, gloves, and even some are saying that we want eye protection worn as well. And then they're also looking at how are the vineyard workers getting to the vineyards? Are they, they're monitoring, are they going to rent a bus? If they run a bus, are they going to run twice a day, twice as many vehicles, but with less people on it? In addition, they're going to roll down the windows, so there's fresh air constantly moving through, they're not stuck in. And then they also have to rework how they're working the vineyards and what things they have in the vineyards, because they're reworking hand sanitizer, they're working sanitation stations in the vineyards, in the restrooms where the employees are. And they're also trying to put covered areas out for shade, because they know that you're going to have a particular group of people that aren't going to be able to go to work because they're going to be too close to people that are already working. So they've got shade, they've got water, and they're trying to keep them situated away from the first group, and they're just going to start rolling them out in waves.
That's wonderful. That's great to hear all the action that they are taking. Erik S., has there been much demand for refurbing kitchens / dining areas to fit COVID regulations, or just to show guests that precautions are being taken? What have you heard on the street about that?
Well, unfortunately, a little bit less than we would like to see, because we have developed a lot of low cost, easy to install solutions for the galleys. But I would say especially for the buffet areas, because I think the buffet areas, the restaurants themselves, they are the places where you have the highest risk, obviously, with the interaction between the passengers and the crew. But it's been slightly less popular than we anticipated. But I mean, just as a heads up to anybody listening in from the cruise lines, we have some really good solutions. We have completely rethought the way we could improve the protection level there. So those actually surprisingly low cost solutions, and many of them can be installed by the vessel's crew themselves. So it's I think flexibility is the key here as well. But I think that we will see more demand, once we see the cruises starting up again. I mean, at the moment we have such a limited. We have one vessel in Taiwan and 2 ships in Germany getting ready, to cruise. So I mean, out of the global fleet. So, yes, I'll hope I'll get some more contacts after this webinar.
For sure. Just as a reminder to everyone participating in today's webinar, if you have additional questions for this team, feel free to submit them on the right-hand side, and I will try to tackle as many as possible. But just put them in the question area, and when we come to the conclusion of these pre-existing questions, I will ask the questions from all of you. Okay, back to Lisa. Do you see any opportunity for smaller suppliers who may be able to be more flexible than larger companies?
Yes, I think so, definitely. Obviously, like I said, we're trying to make sure that we help our existing suppliers who may have inventory already on hand for us for fleet-wide, for what our previous fleet-wide consumption was. But the return to service is going to look different from anything that I think we've seen before. It will be gradual. All the signs seem to point to the fact that it'll start outside of the United States. It already has, as a matter of fact, in Germany. And we may not be able to provision those ships as regularly from the U.S. as we did in the past. So we may have a great need for regional suppliers that can provide for that one ship that's returning to action in Asia, very quickly. And I think that as the return to service will be gradual, we'll be limiting the capacity, at least at the beginning. So the volume will be lower, and we may not be able to commit to a full container load of something or other. So we will be looking for, spot buys and smaller volumes.
That's great, and very hopeful for the smaller suppliers. Thank you for that. Erik A., cash flow for clients and manufacturers will be an issue over the years to come. Have you heard of any industry-specific financial aid or anything specific you received from your company's bank?
Well, as far as cash flow goes, I mean, it's all going back to what Lisa touched upon. It's for us, it's about, if we had to take back product, could we? Number one, and number two, extending terms. I mean, it's no one's fault that this happened. So it's just, we've got to continue to extend terms out, help our customers while we're helping also our winery partners. And the best way to do is what we're doing is we're just keeping a constant chain of conversation going so we can manage everyone's expectations at the same time. We've made probably over 1,000 phone calls back and forth between customers and wineries to extend out payment terms. As far as any kind of specific banking or any kind of finance, we've been leaving that to our CEO, CFO, and COO to take care of, because at the time when we have no sales coming in, they want our sales force out, concentrate on what can we do, how can we reinvent ourselves.
Right, of course. Okay, so here's a question for the three of you, whoever could offer some advice on this. What changes have you made or have you seen being when it comes to shipping products? Does anyone have thoughts on that you're trying to get ready for, such as Lisa spoke about? Maybe it's a focus in Europe, so getting supplies from Europe without the shipping from the States. Any thoughts on that, either Erik or Lisa?
Sure. We are seeing, we have a master load schedule for our combined fleet that was our sort of Bible that the suppliers live and die by. They know what date to deliver to our warehouse for each ship, and it's very set in stone. It's the dry delivery date, bonded delivery date, and it was sort of, you could just sort of count on that schedule, like the sun rising and setting, and it's sort of gone out the window for the last couple of months. So we're provisioning ships on a very irregular basis. So we have sometimes very short notice that we've received approval to dock at a certain location, and so we'll scramble to get supplies to that location. And it's just more seat of the pants than I'm used to for our industry. The logistics of our industry has always been so precise, and it has to be, because our hotels move. They're not there the next day, and then you have to meet that date. And now we're doing it on much shorter notice in places that we really had not been very active before. If you just look off the coast of Barbados, you see like an armada there, that is not usually there. But yeah, again, it's just gone back to being flexible, and suppliers really going above and beyond to shorten their lead times and help us meet those last minute deliveries.
Sure. The two Eriks, anything to add to that?
Well, from our part, I mean, we mostly sell technical equipment, spare parts. For us, there hasn't been a lot of change so far. I mean, as Lisa said, obviously, maybe some ships are in more exotic locations, but no major changes for us.
I mean, for us, it's more managing the expectations, getting back to that type of thing for our guests and for our clients, because we deal with a lot of wineries that are overseas, and we need to bring in samples. And you've got to remember that not only cruise lines have cut back, but everyone across the globe has cut back. So for us to get items approved to bring in from overseas as samples, it's taken what used to take days, it's now taken weeks and even a month at a time. So we have to go back and let them know immediately, hey, if you want to do a tasting on this day, or you want to sample something on this day, this is how you're going to have to be able to handle it, because we may not have an opportunity to do something from outside the US in a short period of time.
Right. Erik S., what are the anticipated expectations of the cruise lines for vendors with regard to boarding the ship and working on the ship? And also, what will be the role of independent contractors as the industry ramps up again? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, at the moment, obviously, we are seeing extremely tight safety protocols to prevent, you know, any new cases entering the vessels. I mean, depending a bit on the cruise line, I mean, in many cases, a negative test is required for any of the personnel entering the ships, or in case of not having a negative test, a quarantine on board in a special area with basically room service. The way we see it, I mean, it depends a lot, because now we are starting to see ships going into cold layup as well, instead of the usual warm layup or the normal type of layup, which is depending, of course, on the climate where the vessel is being laid up, but can cause serious damage to the interior materials of the vessel. So I mean, we are expecting that instead of these very large modernizations where we are changing, for example, a nightclub into new cabins or something like this, that there will be more of these refurbishment type of projects, new carpets, curtains, this type of things. So, but I think, you know, I mean, we are trying to keep our capacity and capability to respond at very short notice, and I think that's always been one of our special things. I mean, it's we have never tried to be the lowest cost supplier in the market, but I think everybody knows when they hear the word ALMACO. I mean, if you need to make the impossible happen, you call us.
There you go. Okay, so that was all the pre-existing questions. Now it's time for some wildcards, guys. So the first question that came in, we've talked a lot about innovation today, which Erik, how your team has pivoted, both Erik's, how Lisa has pivoted with her needs and wants at RCL. But do you guys believe COVID is going to kill innovation, or will it offer opportunities for innovation? Whoever wants to take that, it's all yours.
If I can start, I mean, I can see a huge amount of innovation, both, you know, from you know, the companies we work with. We are essentially a network company, from our own staff and also from the cruise lines. I mean, I don't think we have ever thought as deeply about, you know, how we can be more cost efficient. And also we have brought some new solutions to the market for sanitation products, and I think there will be some very exciting releases for the first time, you know, coming from different parts of very demanding landside markets to the cruise vessels, which we are looking to introduce. So for us, I mean, yes, we are hurting very badly at the moment, but we are also innovating more than ever before.
Right.
Yeah, and I'd like to add that you know, the innovation, it's a doors for innovation. You look at what people and places are doing now about disinfecting after COVID. You know, what was the original thing they say? Okay, you wipe everything down, you fog everything with an electrostatic sprayer. Now, if I may speak on the airline side, you look at what JetBlue has done. We work with JetBlue, and you look what they've done. They've actually brought in ultraviolet machines that will drive up and down the aisle of the plane, and they can have that plane disinfected in 10 minutes with these new light machines. And I know that's going into, they're going to start testing those here in Fort Lauderdale in the coming future. So it's going to really open up the door for innovation, people that really think outside the box, and really, if they have a great idea, they're going to get their foot in the door fast.
Right, I agree. So Lisa, Guy, you have a particular question being asked to you right now, which is, how critical is it for your suppliers to offer next business day deliveries on orders at no charge?
It depends. That's a tough one to answer. It depends. I mean, I think we would ask that only if it were a real emergency. We're trying to plan ahead again in the constraints that I mentioned earlier, which is that we don't know where the ship will provision next or on what date, or even, you know, if we'll be allowed to access the dock that we're planning to. But flexibility and absorbing an ancillary charge here and there are very important and appreciated, I would say. We try to keep it to a minimum. We don't want to run up our suppliers' costs unnecessarily. And I would say that from my side, we won't ask unless it's a critical need. We'll try to give it enough notice so that it can be delivered efficiently without a lot of extra costs.
Understood. Now, Lisa, I'm just preparing you. You are the popular individual on these questions coming up. So now you have another question. Would having the supplier make inventory levels available to you 24/7 be helpful?
We're asking for them to provide us their inventory levels once a month right now, and I feel like that's a good. My team manages about 15,000 SKUs of uniforms, consumables, replaceables. It's a lot of information to go through, and a monthly check-in seems to be catching a lot of problem areas with items that they may be a little short on, and then conversely items where we're heavy, where there's an excess or obsolescence concern. I would just say that, yeah, 24/7 would be maybe a nice to have for certain critical SKUs, maybe our top 100, so that if we have an immediate need or if we're going to need a significantly large quantity for a ramp up in anticipation of a return to service for a particular ship, sure, it would be nice to access that information instantaneously, but I think I can ask suppliers for targeted information as needed, and they've been very responsive and able to provide me with what I need.
Okay, so moving on with the next question here. Is it still possible to get new innovative products on board through new suppliers, Lisa?
Is this also for me?
Oh yeah, you are popular girl today.
I would say absolutely, yes. Like I said, we always welcome any kind of new ideas from new and existing suppliers. We welcome it. We vet it out thoroughly. No email to my team goes unanswered, I'd like to think. It has to be something that meets the specific need of what the situation that we're in right now. Like I said, if it's something that's pertaining to, you know, entertainment or onboard activities or things that are sort of lower on the importance scale right now, then we may have to shelve those for a while. But absolutely, we don't turn away any new ideas.
Okay, continuing on, Lisa, if you want to drink of water, you can get that. There you go. The next question for you is, it doesn't state it's for you, but I think you're going to have to answer it. Would the ability to purchase shoes and uniforms that have never been tried on, no prior human contact, be beneficial to your cruise line company?
That's sort of all we buy. I'm a little confused by that one because, I mean, we don't buy used uniforms, that's for sure.
So if there could be, Erik, go ahead with that.
Yeah, I think actually, because on the more technical side from COVID-19 and spread, etc. I mean, I think the question here is, or I mean, the way I interpret this person is that, you know, that these would have sort of like touchless delivery, because especially when the pandemic started, people were actually, I would say, even hysteric about, you know, thinking that how does COVID spread from touch, you know, that you might get, you know, you're getting delivery home, and then, or you go to the supermarket, you touch some of the items other people have touched with their hands, and how likely it is to get COVID-19 from any like materials, food, whatever, which has been delivered. And I think, you know, I mean, if you look now at the CDC, the European ECDC, all of and the latest studies, I mean, it's there was actually a very interesting also webinar by Carnival a couple of days ago, which was a very scientific panel. So there was they had assembled really top medical experts to discuss about it. And while COVID-19 definitely spreads from touch, I mean, there is proof of that, it's not by far the main spread vector. And it's unlike, for example, the norovirus, which has been, you know, plaguing the industry for a long time. and against which there are very effective remedies also developed by the industry. The coronavirus is a very unstable virus. It's not a robust virus, so it does not stay infectious on surfaces nearly as long as the norovirus, and especially like from getting any deliveries, it is extremely unlikely to catch the COVID-19 by that way.
Thanks
right,
for
and
that.
by the nature of our business, the items that we have delivered to the ship are sort of in a quarantine of their own for a couple of days. Just the transit time to the warehouse, from the warehouse to the vessel. Once it gets on board, it goes into inventory. It's a good 48 to 72 hours minimum, and sometimes much longer before that uniform will be touched again by human hands, unwrapped, opened, tried on. So I would say the risk. I agree with Erik that the risk would be minimal.
Great. And David L., who asked that question, if I butchered it, you can clarify on this question area, and I will clarify for the team. But this is next a really great question, and I would actually like each of you to answer it. If you could have done one thing to prepare business-wise before this pandemic, what would it have been? Uh-oh, got you on a good question. I know. Whoever wants to take that first.
Okay, I'll do it. I'll do it first. If we could have prepared for it, I mean I mean, well, I don't know if I could have foreseen this, I wouldn't be here. I mean, I would be very rich playing the stock market, but that's not the case. So I'd say we should, because we were already looking into the sanitation product line, because there's a lot of companies out there selling very dubious products, or making very dubious claims about products which as such can be very good products, but you know, they don't understand the limits of those technologies and products. And we were actually a couple of months before the pandemic started, we were already in discussions about adding this new product line. But I guess we should have done that with, you know, more. We should have been more active. We should have been doing it in a how should I say, more disciplined way, instead of just, you know, looking at as a long-term business proposal. But I mean, otherwise, I think, you know, it would have been for a company doing products like us. I mean, we cannot just like immediately pivot, you know, from the cruise and offshore market to, let's say, I don't know, to the hospital and military market. It just doesn't work. Just doesn't work like that when you're doing any sort of technology.
Sure. Erik or Lisa, any thoughts on this to better prepare if you knew this was coming?
Well, if we knew it was coming, it would have been great to have been able to get in touch with some of our spirits suppliers and some of our wine suppliers and say, okay, let's start taking out a percentage of what you intend on selling to as far as beverages, and let's turn it into sanitizer now. That way we can actually get something, you know, help stabilize this early. And, you know, because at the end of the day, a lot of these wineries, a lot of alcohol companies and beverage companies, just distilleries, they were reactive instead of proactive. So it would have been better if they could just start saying, okay, let's make sanitizer now. Let's bump up the sales, bump up production in that. And then we're ready once things start coming up.
See, I would have asked for that liquor to come to my home while we were in lockdown. That's what that would have been my thing. Lisa, anything to add to that?
Well, aside from the obvious, where I'm fantasizing about having had the foresight to stockpile disposable coveralls and gloves and things that have become in very short supply over the last 4 months. I think I mentioned inventory levels and monitoring them monthly, and how we started that somewhat recently. I would have started it a lot longer ago, so that we would have had a really good handle on what our suppliers have on the shelf, what they have in production, what that translates into in terms of our monthly usage, how many months of inventory that represents, what we have on the ship, you know, excess and obsolescence, all that sort of thing, I think would have made it easier to plan for what we'll need going forward.
Great.
I can't believe nobody has mentioned toilet paper yet.
Oh,
We were always good with that, thankfully. We were lucky, because I think the hospitality and it's particularly the toilet paper that you use on a ship is not the same as what you find in the supermarket. So we've been lucky. We've been blessed with an uninterrupted supply there.
Thank goodness. So Lisa, now this is a question for you, and really if either Erik have something to add to this. Are tablecloth and napkin purchases on the back burner for cruise lines at this time? And would you see a need for a marine grade / UV non-washable tablecloth, an important purchase needed for cruise lines at this time?
I think I would love the opportunity to vet out a product like that. I haven't seen anything like that brought to my attention as yet. It seems like it would have to have a very compelling case for the cleanliness and the ability to repel viruses and germs. It's something that would make us feel safer than our current process of laundering frequently. I would never say no to any potential idea like that, though.
Yeah, thank you for that. And then in addition to disposable coveralls, what other key uniform products are people having difficulty finding?
It's been really the sort of things that everyone needs that we understand were prioritized, behind the first responders. It's disposable coveralls, foot covers, gloves, and again, I commend our suppliers that even at the worst point of the pandemic, we may have had to send one case fewer to a ship than they had ordered, but they did a pretty good job with our continuity of supply.
Great. So listen, I'm sorry for the people that asked more questions that I were not able to get to, but that is all the time we have for today. Thank you all very much for attending Seatrade Cruise webinar on how COVID-19 will affect the manufacturing supplier community. In addition, I cannot thank the individuals enough for bringing this webinar to life. Erik, and Lisa, especially Erik A. and Lisa G. for being incredible at hopping on at the last moment. You truly made my birthday wonderful. And most of all, thank you for all of us uniting together, all of us on this webinar, because all of us uniting together will make us come back stronger. So just as a reminder, we will be sending a recording of the webinar out tomorrow for everyone that was part of this webinar. And lastly, remember the finale, the big finale of the Seatrade webinars on the impact on cruise operations is happening next week on August 6th. This is going to be a great seminar. I bet you there's going to be confetti prepared for us. It's going to be an exciting time and a really great webinar. And this is a webinar for all of you joining this call to ask the questions that you've been scared to ask. This is where you want all the truth to come out on this webinar. So sign up and submit your questions early so it can be on the list. And on behalf of Seatrade Cruise, thank you so much, and we'll talk again. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope to see you all on board soon.